Good evening. My name is Kimberly Allen, and I lead media strategy and engagement for SPLC's Confederate Memorials work. Welcome to the Public Art and Politics of Remembering Georgia's Confederate Past, a virtual panel discussion on the legacy of Confederate memorials in Georgia, presented by the Southern Poverty Law Center in collaboration with the City of Atlanta's Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs. This evening's moderator will be Lecia Brooks, Chief of Staff for the Southern Poverty Law Center and the SPLC Action Fund. Tonight's featured speakers include Lisa Tuttle, multi-disciplinary artist whose post-colonial karma exhibition is currently on display at Gallery 72 in downtown Atlanta. Kimberly Probolus, SPLC Fellow for the Intelligence Project. Kevin Sipp, a curator representing the City of Atlanta's Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs. We will also hear from State Representative Billy Mitchell of the Georgia House of Representatives representing Stone Mountain, AJ Sanders and Harini Vijay of the Wheeler Name Change Group in Cobb County, Georgia, and Derica Williams and Michelle Colbert of the Stone Mountain Action Coalition. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly share some housekeeping notes. To start, this briefing is being recorded. We've enabled closed captioning. Ryan Lenz will be our ASL interpreter for the duration of this briefing. If there are any technical difficulties with closed captioning, or if the ASL interpreters at any point go off camera, please alert us via the Q&A window. All attendees have been muted to limit background noise as much as possible. The chat is turned off for attendees. We will use the chat function to drop in some helpful links and information throughout the webinar. Please type your questions in the Q&A window by clicking Q&A at the bottom of your screen. When submitting your questions, please indicate who the question is for or who it is directed to. We will answer as many questions as we can. Please keep an eye out for answers to other participants' questions under Answered in the Q&A window. There will also be opportunities at the end of the briefing to have your questions answered. Be sure to include your name and news outlet or affiliation. We may modify or combine questions to cover as many as we can during the Q&A portion of this briefing. Following the event, we will send a video recording of the briefing as well as a written transcript and relevant links and resources shared throughout the webinar to those who RSVP'd. That video and transcript are available to you to clip and use in coverage on the outlet you represent. After this event, if there are additional ways that the SPLC can make this briefing more accessible for you, your audiences, or your coworkers, please let us know. The artwork and images shared by artist Lisa Tuttle, the City of Atlanta Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs, Gallery 72, and/or Poem 88 may not be downloaded, copied, linked to, or edited in any manner or form for use on any website, image, gallery, clip art collection, printed product, or any other derivative uses without express written permission from Lisa Tuttle. Additionally, please note the content warning for this webinar. Please be advised, this presentation includes images and symbols of white supremacy that some attendees may find emotionally triggering. If your question is not answered, please email me directly at kimberly.allen@splcenter.org, and I will help get your questions answered. You may also email our SPLC press office at press@splcenter.org. If you would like to email our panelists directly, their emails will be displayed at the end of this briefing. We don't anticipate any technical difficulties during this briefing, but if there are any challenges, our speakers may temporarily go off camera to keep the audio uninterrupted. This forum will discuss how public art impacts history and the politics of memory in Georgia and nationally, as well as learn more about upcoming legislation that can help remove Confederate memorials from Georgia's public spaces. Throughout the webinar, we will share important results compiled by Tolchin Research on behalf of the Southern Poverty Law Center. We will also share data from SPLC's Whose Heritage Report, which remains focused on ongoing efforts to remove memorials and symbols honoring the Confederacy, as well as a look at what's coming in the upcoming third edition of the Whose Heritage Report from the SPLC Intelligence Project. For other specific inquiries on any of SPLC's work and practice areas, please contact press@splcenter.org. Now I would like to introduce you to Mr. Kevin Sipp, Project Supervisor for the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs, with a welcome on behalf of the City of Atlanta. Mr. Sipp is an Atlanta-based artist and the curator of Gallery 72, a municipally owned art gallery located in downtown Atlanta. Kevin?
Welcome, everyone. Let me, on behalf of Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and my Executive Director, Camille Russell Love, welcome you all to this incredibly important webinar. As said before, I run 3 municipal galleries for the City of Atlanta, one of which is Gallery 72, where the current exhibition, Post-Colonial Karma by Lisa Tuttle, is on display right now. And I advise all of you to come and take a look at this very important retrospective exhibit. I hope this exhibition engenders welcome and needed dialogue about how we move forward dealing with these monuments. So once again, on behalf of the City of Atlanta and Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, my Executive Director, Camille Russell Love, and all who work for the City of Atlanta, thank you for being here this evening. And I can return it back to Kimberly.
Thank you, Kevin. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Lecia Brooks, Chief of Staff of the Southern Poverty Law Center and the SPLC Action Fund, who will serve as the moderator for tonight's event. Ms. Brooks provides support to leadership and assists with strategic planning. Lecia also previously served as the SPLC's Outreach Director and was Director of the SPLC's Civil Rights Memorial Center, an interpretive experience designed to provide visitors with a deeper understanding of the civil rights movement. Lecia, please kick us off.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, and thank you to all of the panelists for joining us tonight, the artists. Thank you for everyone that joined this webinar. Whether it's a portrait, music, or a poem, art can be used to raise awareness about social issues. Inspiring deep thought and activism, art has the power to lead us to positive and sustained change. Art is also a community builder in its ability to bring people together in spaces they may never have otherwise occupied together. Art can convey thoughts that many of us have some difficulty expressing in words. By placing a white flag in the hands of Confederate leaders, like the John Gordon statue that sits in front of the Georgia State Capitol, as shown in the proposal for John Brown Gordon Monument piece on the right-hand side of your screen. This piece was created by artist Lisa Tuttle, whose post-colonial Karma exhibition continues to contribute to correcting the harmful lies that over 2,000 live Confederate memorials that sit in public spaces across the US continue to tell. As shown on screen, protesters transformed this Robert E. Lee statue from something that uplifted white supremacy into a space where Americans of diverse backgrounds gathered to offer each other support and share modern day perspectives. Most important, they turned a symbol of hate into a powerful community art piece that lessens the statue's harmful and offensive effects. Art can also serve as a disruptor, providing another way to correct the historical record. Because the truth is, we can't move forward until we do. This is especially true in the state of Georgia, which is one of 6 Southern states that has enacted preservation laws to stop communities from removing symbols of hate from public space. Important to note that these laws began passing in the 21st century, decades after the Civil War was lost in 1865. Preservation laws were the source of the city of Decatur's fight to remove a Confederate statue from its downtown square, and the fact that Senate Bill 77 was passed by the Georgia legislature in 2019 to stop that statue's removal. Preservation laws leave no options for local elected officials or their constituents to make decisions about what they want to see in their own public spaces. Before we meet Ms. Tuttle, please note that throughout tonight's presentation, we will share important results compiled by Tolchin Research on behalf of the Southern Poverty Law Center. In our Confederate monument removal assessment, 500 statewide registered Georgia voters were surveyed. The survey found that 62% of Georgians are concerned about removing Confederate monuments from public lands. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce Lisa Tuttle, a multidisciplinary artist who for the past 25 years has used art to examine race and racism in the American South. Ms. Tuttle recently commissioned a new work for Atlanta's Gallery 72 that reimagines Stone Mountain's enormous carving of Confederate leaders. Ms. Tuttle will now present artwork from her exhibition that beautifully shows art's role in the fight for social justice and the removal of Confederate symbols from public space.
Thank you so much, Lecia, for that wonderful introduction. And I really want to, before, I know my time is limited, but I really want to thank the Southern Poverty Law Center for inviting me for this incredible opportunity to connect as an artist and my work that I'm showing at Gallery 72 with the broader community. And I also want to thank the City of Atlanta, Kevin Sipp, and also Camille Love as well for the opportunity to do the exhibition. I hope people will get a chance to go see it. It'll be up through mid-February, and we can let you know more about it. But the 2 works that we're showing here, there are 35 works in the show, but I think particularly the work, I wanted to show them side by side. One was done, the larger vertical one was done in 2000, and the single image that's on the left of my screen was done just this year. And I wanted to talk about why my interest in removing Confederate symbols from public space, but also sort of what my personal connection is to this complicated and really disturbing Southern history. And the work on the work that has the handwriting in both pieces is actually a reproduction of a receipt that I have in my family. I like old photographs and old letters and all kinds of things, but it's a receipt that was written for $50 to my great grandmother in Virginia for the hire of her Negro woman Martha for a year for $50, and she was to be returned at the expiration of the year with a hat and with clothing. And it's a very uncomfortable thing to find. It's shocking, and yet it's the reality of those of us who are descendants of the South, and something that I feel like we all have that I'm trying to, perhaps if I can't change the past, see what my efforts might be able to do to reconnect with a larger community and to change our future, particularly as it comes to systemic racism. And I'm sure that I'm supposed to know who I'm passing it to, but someone's going to have to jump in and help me too. But that's the work. And there's a whole slew of other things that you're going to see tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. And I just want to underscore your invitation to see this beautiful work in Atlanta. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to now move to my colleague, Kimberly Probolus. Kimberly is an ACLS Leading Edge Fellow with the Southern Poverty Law Center's Intelligence Project. Kimberly researches the history of Confederate monuments and has updated our Whose Heritage report on public symbols of the Confederacy. Kimberly's research discovered 64 new Confederate symbols associated with the United States military last spring, and also discovered 100 new schools honoring Confederates across the US. Kimberly?
Thank you for that introduction, Lecia, and thank you all for being here. Today, I'll give an overview of the goals for Whose Heritage, summarize our data with a specific focus on Georgia, and finally end by considering how the powerful artwork created by Ms. Tuttle is part of a broader movement to fight hate. Much like the artwork of Ms. Tuttle, the goal of Whose Heritage is to change narratives about the Civil War and promote a better understanding of how the legacy of slavery continues to inform racial inequality in the present. Polling shows that the public is more receptive to removing Confederate memorials when they understand the history behind those symbols. By educating the public about how the Confederacy fought to preserve the institution of slavery and how Confederate monuments were intentionally erected to promote white supremacy, we believe that we can increase support for their removal, represented by this image of the Robert E. Lee Monument being removed from Charlottesville, Virginia. Ultimately, the SPLC aims to eliminate Confederate symbols of hate and white supremacy, which we believe is an essential starting point for creating a society that is more equitable and just. And we support activists like the Northside Coalition of Jacksonville, depicted here, working to remove Confederate memorials. Moreover, the SPLC is committed to using all the tools in our toolbox to achieve this goal. This means collecting data, telling stories, and uplifting visual narratives that challenge the pernicious lost cause ideology. Compiling data has been central to the SPLC's work because we believe that helping communities identify symbols of hate is the first step towards removing them. In the process, important insights have emerged about the state of Confederate memorials in our country. One of the key findings of the report is that Confederate memorials were erected during two time periods, demonstrated by this graphic. The first was after Reconstruction during the Jim Crow era, and the second corresponded with the Civil Rights Movement. As you can see from the chart, the first spike was mostly monuments, and the second, smaller spike was a lot more schools, which overlapped with Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. This illustrates how Confederate memorials were erected as part of an organized propaganda campaign to promote hate and white supremacy. Today, there are over 2,000 Confederate memorials listed as live in our database. We are inspired by the more than 380 memorials that have been relocated, renamed, or removed. And we urge the communities where over 30 pending memorials are located to follow through on their promise to eliminate symbols of hate. These national numbers help to contextualize the landscape in Georgia, where there are over 280 live memorials. Of that figure, more than 10 are buildings, more than 10 are counties or municipalities, more than 30 are miscellaneous memorials, including the Sydney Linear Bridge in Brunswick and the Ashby MARTA station. More than 40 are schools, over 60 are roadways, and finally, there are more than 110 live Confederate monuments in Georgia. While these figures provide important context for understanding how pervasive Confederate memorials are, data can only tell part of the story. Like art, history is also a powerful tool for helping to correct false narratives about the lost cause. Take, for example, Ms. Tuttle's artwork proposing the removal of the Confederate memorial from Stone Mountain, which is the world's largest Confederate monument. In 1915, the second coming of the Ku Klux Klan occurred atop Stone Mountain. Klan money actually helped to fund the monument, and the owner, Samuel Venable, was a Klansman, and he granted the Klan rights to hold meetings there in perpetuity, and for decades it did. When the giant carving was completed in 1972, it depicted the faces of Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, and Stonewall Jackson, the three most frequently commemorated figures of the Confederacy. More recently, in 2015, shortly after the Emanuel Church massacre, over 700 people from the Sons of Confederate Veterans, the League of the South, and others rallied at Stone Mountain. What's so inspiring about Ms. Tuttle's work is that it provides a visual narrative that reckons with this history while also imagining futures that move beyond Confederate symbols of white supremacy. We hope that her work inspires communities to create new narratives using art, data, and history that can help envision a better future for us all. The SPLC's Sounds Like Hate podcast draws on similar themes, using narrative and storytelling to expose the legacy of the Confederacy and its impact on landscapes of hate today. Whose heritage not only helps communities identify symbols of hate, it changes narratives about the Civil War and corrects the lost cause ideology. The Confederacy fought against the United States to perpetuate slavery, and we continue to live with that legacy today. While the SPLC knows that removing Confederate symbols cannot solve structural inequality, we also know that we cannot begin to create a better world until these symbols are removed. In the third edition of Whose Heritage, coming out early next year, we'll provide more information on how to fight hate with history. And for more on the contemporary landscape of hate and white supremacy, be on the lookout for our annual Year in Hate report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. It's so important to have the facts, the historical facts. Thank you for bringing just some of the highlights from your Whose Heritage update. We look forward to seeing it early next year. Now we're going to revisit Lisa's art. Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about your inspiration behind Proposal for Stone Mountain?
Well, very briefly, as you see, I think it takes a certain, lifting a statue off of a pedestal is one thing, and certainly takes political will. But many of us in the public art world really, have talked about, like, well, what are we going to do about Stone Mountain? It's, whatever, 90 feet by 190 feet and 46 feet deep carving. And so, it's protected by law, which I'm sure Representative Mitchell will tell us more about, but it's protected by law, which was put in place when the legislature made the compromise about the state flag and changing the flag. But anyway, actually was sort of a smart aleck comment, but it is sort of a plausible idea, which is, well, if we can't take them down, why don't we just give them big surrender flags? And as a public art project and as a public statement. And it's funny, but it's also slightly plausible. And that's where the whole thing is, that, possibly to have something more like the alternative Daughters of the Confederacy or South, and come forward and let us historically memorialize the end of the Confederacy, the dissolution of the Confederate government, and perhaps it could begin in April when Lee surrendered to Grant, and go through the dissolution of the government on May 4th, and perhaps end up on Juneteenth. And we can all, and we can give the flag, particularly the smaller monuments, it'd be pretty easy to put a flag on. So anyway, that's the proposal.
I think it's brilliant, Lisa. Thank you. I mean, it retells the history, right? I mean, introduces kind of factual history and turns it on its head. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I love the surrender.
I tell just quickly too, I'm just telling people, like, well, it's history. I mean, it's a historical fact. They did lose the war. So anyway.
Yeah, thank you for getting that. Thank you. Okay. As I mentioned at the beginning of the briefing, Georgia is one of 6 states with oppressive preservation laws in place that halt the removal of Confederate symbols from public space. It's important to note that sentiments around preservation laws have changed statewide. According to our survey, 54% of Georgians now support changing laws to allow for the removal of Confederate monuments here. This number is up 9% from our last survey in 2018. That is certainly progress. I have a question for the panelists. Are Georgians really ready to see these laws change, even if it leads to changes in Stone Mountain Park?
I am.
Thanks, Lisa. Representative Mitchell, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think there's no question about it. I often tell communities it's not a matter of if these memorials to the Confederacy will come down, it's a matter of when. The changing sentiment towards these kinds of memorials becoming front and center in many communities, and it is preventing those who do business with places like Stone Mountain Park from even earning a profit as a result. So it's just a matter of time and political will.
Thank you. Mr. Sipp, you want to get in? I see your hand. Thank you.
Yes, I believe we're ready. And as Mr. Mitchell said, it's a matter of time. I think as each generation moves farther and farther away from the vitriol of the past, I'm so hopeful that our children, you can see them coming together quite often and understanding that a lot of this is something they need to let go of. So I am hopeful that one day we will reach a consensus of change and remove those statues.
Change is possible. I know we haven't formally met our student activists from Wheeler High School, but I want to invite you all to share your opinions as well. Irini, AJ.
This is AJ speaking, but I definitely agree that these huge monuments, they're basically exactly what we're talking about, the uplifting of, white supremacy through these honorings of Confederate soldiers is, it's just really horrible because, as Lisa did say, they lost the war. And so there's really no reason for them to be honored as such unless there is an underlying reason. And it's just time for a change, like a change of removing these monuments and moving forward to a new future of inclusivity.
Thank you, AJ. Let me ask you this too, if I can draw your attention to the results of the survey. Is 54% of Georgians now supporting laws, changing the laws? Does that encourage you, or does that cause you concern? How do you feel about that percentage there?
That 54%, I would love to see it go up. It does encourage me. It shows that there is an improvement from the last survey, as I see on here. And it's good that people are starting to open their eyes towards these issues and seeing that there is a real problem with the underlying message behind these monuments. So it's very encouraging for our cause, and also an encouragement to continue advocating for all removals of Confederate symbols.
Well said, thank you.
Can I say something about that?
Oh, please.
Too? I think that too. I love the fact that it's up 9%. And I think that I've said a couple of times during this process that I think that there are people that are very clearly identify, who quickly, identify, yes, we need to take them down. No, we must preserve them. But I think there's a vast group of people who really haven't thought about it very deeply, who really have not really tuned into the fact that these are not just works of art or, just neutral things. And I think that the more we can do to educate people what the history of these monuments were, what happened, that they're not benign, I think that we'll convince more people to understand why we need to remove all Confederate iconography from public space. Public art should have public consensus. So.
Thank you, Lisa. Let me invite Ms. Williams.
Yes, I also completely agree with what everyone has said. And every time I get an opportunity to speak about this work, I always say, I live in a state that makes me pay to be disrespected. Stone Mountain Park the shortfalls when it comes to loss of income, loss of revenue at that park is subsidized by state dollars. I pay taxes in this state of Georgia. I'm a native Atlantan. I live in Stone Mountain. Stone Mountain is in my backyard. And I think education is definitely the answer to helping people see and understand that the removal of these Confederate monuments is critical. It's critical to the sustainability of our society, in my opinion. And I just think more and more of us are ready to stand and scream and shout that we will no longer allow our tax dollars to be used to, to perpetuate these shrines to white supremacy.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll be hearing
Ms. Brooks.
Oh, please go
ahead. If I may,
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, the students from Wheeler High School, they give me so much hope. And this is why I do believe that it's just a matter of when and not if. The reality is, we look at, I think the 54% is a rather low figure. However, I think what you have in that number is what the students at Wheeler High School faced when they wished to change their name. There are folks who are opposed to the name change, not because of any love for who the school was named after, but it's the only Wheeler High School they know. It's the Wheeler High School that's on their diploma. But I think the numbers would be much, much higher if before they came to know that school as Wheeler, they said, should we name it after this segregationist or this Confederate leader? I think the numbers would be a lot higher.
I think you're right. And we're going to hear from those incredible activists just a little bit later on. So thank you all for engaging in that quick discussion. The advocacy of Georgians has been a driving force in changing minds across the state when it comes to removing Confederate symbols from public space. And we're so certainly grateful for that. It's now my great pleasure to introduce formally Ms. Michelle Colbert and Derica Williams with the Stone Mountain Action Coalition. SPLC has been proud, just honored to work alongside the Stone Mountain Action Coalition in your fight to make long overdue changes to Confederate iconography located throughout the park. The Stone Mountain Action Coalition is a movement dedicated to a more inclusive Stone Mountain Park, centered on the principles of healing, transformation, and progress. The group's membership is a diverse coalition of concerned citizens, political leaders, community organizations, faith-based groups, and businesses who are dedicated to supporting constructive solutions and ideas that reflect a new shared vision for the park. Michelle?
Thank you so much, Lecia, and hello everybody, and thank you so much for attending this discussion. My name is Michelle Colbert, and I am an art and architectural historian and leader with the Stone Mountain Action Coalition. I am joined by my colleague, Derica Williams, who is a founding member of the Stone Mountain Action Coalition, and we are both very happy to be here tonight. We wanted to take this time to share some updates in the ways in which we have worked to create a more just and equitable Stone Mountain Park. Prior to our formation, the only official group associated with Stone Mountain Park was the Stone Mountain Memorial Association, or SMMA. Formed in 1958 by the act of state legislature that led to the completion of Stone Mountain's memorial carving, SMMA has in many ways stood frozen in time as champions of the lost cause narrative and racial discrimination in the state of Georgia. Upon forming, SMAC started as a small grassroots group and has grown into a movement of hundreds of supporters and dozens of partnerships with fellow advocacy groups all across the country. While the eradication of Confederate symbols at Stone Mountain Park remains at our core, we have sought to accomplish this goal by creating a space for meaningful community discussion within the bounds of the park and in the greater Stone Mountain community. On this slide, you will see community events such as our sit-ins, which echo the strategies of Georgia's great civil rights leaders by providing a venue for discussion among some of Stone Mountain's most diverse visitors that frequent the walk-up trail. You will also see a flyer which references our partnership with the Beacon Hill Black Alliance for Human Rights in the planning of the City of Decatur's first ever Juneteenth event that expanded the conversation beyond Stone Mountain into the greater metro Atlanta area with a focus on liberated spaces. And lastly, you'll see an image from our Paint the Hate Away event, which brought together local students and community members for a day of art making, reflection, and creativity. On the next slide, you will see, in addition to our community outreach events, members of SMAC have continued to keep pressure on SMMA by attending and speaking at monthly public board meetings. While members of SMMA are public servants with governor-appointed positions, they do not represent their constituency. Each meeting only allots the participation of 5 speakers for 3 minutes each. That totals in at 15 minutes a month for public comment. Our consistent presence has created more accountability, reflected in SMMA's most recent RFP process seeking a new corporate management company because of the impending departure of the park's current partner, a result of the controversial nature of the park's Confederate symbols. On the next slide, you will see some images from our new social media campaign. We have shifted our social media content to center education and raise public awareness. We have found that there is little to no public awareness about the history of Stone Mountain at the local, state, and national level, and have sought to create educational content to provide evidence-based information to the public. It is our hope that with this new strategy, we will be able to reach a wider audience and educate our supporters about the true history of Stone Mountain. On the next slide, just some notes about what's new coming up for us in 2022. As we look forward, our organization plans to continue placing pressure on park officials and hosting more community outreach events, supporting more legislature, advocating for real and immediate changes at Stone Mountain Park. And those GIFs on the image kind of show how easily it would be just to change street names and these flags immediately, which SMMA does have the power to do. And I will turn it back over to Lecia.
Thank you, Michelle. I know that we're running tight on time, but I really must uplift this compliment to the Stone Mountain Action Coalition that was dropped in the Q&A. The Stone Mountain Action Coalition is a fantastic organization. Every time I walk the 5-mile loop around the park, I wear SMAC poster and people always give me the thumbs up and thank me. We just have to get the word out about this movement. Thank you so much for all that you all do. I know that the link was just dropped in the chat about how folks on this call can join the coalition. So I really want to invite you to do so. Now back to Lisa, our artist. Lisa, tell us about the Stone Mountain artwork you've entitled Erased Stone Mountain.
Well, this actually piece, if you go to the gallery, and you can even go by at night, is projected onto a wall that you can see inside and outside. The proposal for the surrender flags, actually I did in 2019, and I'm sort of updating it. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know, and quite frankly, it was particularly Stacey Abrams who, when she said, you know, we just need to sandblast them off, where I thought, you know, maybe surrender flags, it's funny. And I still think it could be done, and would make a point, but it might not be, it's not enough really just to surrender. It really, we need to start over. It's a little bit of a, so this is what it would look like, I guess, if you just kind of chipped it off. But we may need to start, you know, may need to start over. And it'll never be the pristine mountain again, but it might be something that, anyway, this is what it would look like if it were actually taken down. And before I close, I just want to be sure that maybe people know about the show again. I hope you'll take a chance and go downtown to Gallery 72. It's open Monday through Friday. It's free, and it's open between 8:30 and 5:30 every day. So, and we'll have a book signing. We've done a book of the show in mid-January. So if people are interested, they can email me.
Thank you, Lisa. Really appreciate that. Now it's my honor to formally introduce State Representative Billy Mitchell. He's a leader of leaders, Having been elected by his colleagues to serve as chair of the Georgia House of Representatives Democratic Caucus, he also serves as the president of the National Black Caucus of state legislatures. Elected by his nationwide peers to lead the organization of African-American state legislators who represent nearly 70 million constituents across the country. Representative Mitchell has served the Stone Mountain District since 2002. Welcome and thank you for being with us, Representative Mitchell.
Well, thank you, Lecia. I really appreciate it. I will tell you that Confederates may have lost the Civil War, but they did win the war over its official memory. They not only fought in popular literature, books, and school curricula, but also on courthouse steps, city squares, capitals, and Granite Rock, as is the case, where they erected monuments to the Confederacy. Now, Americans are now confronting the propriety of celebrating those who by law committed treason in the name of preserving slavery and subsequently Jim Crow. Now, Germany in 1945 is a useful comparison when most Nazi relics were banished from public view. For we deceive ourselves when we perpetuate the myth of Confederate innocence, the idea that there were good people on both sides who fought over distant abstractions and then came together in goodwill. In 1956, the Supreme Court ruled bus segregation laws unconstitutional. My predecessors in the Georgia legislature responded by adding the Confederate battle flag to its own. President Johnson signed the 1964 Civil Rights Act banning employment discrimination. The Georgia legislature responded by renaming Fair Street Memorial Drive. Fair Street is one of the longest streets in Georgia. It runs all the way to Stone Mountain Park from the state capitol, which at that time, Stone Mountain was the meeting place of the Klan and remains a memorial to the Confederacy to this day. Now, previously, as vice mayor of the city of Stone Mountain, I authored legislation that changed the name of Memorial Drive that runs through the city to James B. Rivers Memorial Drive. Now, James B. Rivers was the first African-American employee in the city's history. Despite his character, his education, and his aptitude, the only job he could get then was in the sanitation department. But Mr. Rivers had resolve, and he was resolute, and he worked his way all the way up to chief of police. In Germany, you will not see neo-Nazis converging on monuments to Adolf Hitler and other Nazis because no such statutes exist. Long ago, they came to grips with their history. I find it telling that you will find Nazis and Klansmen in this country honoring Confederates, the sons and daughters of their victims, the millions of Union soldier family members, Jewish and Catholic citizens who were labeled sympathizers, and of course the enslaved will say those you memorialize deserve the same eternal infamy as Hitler. Now, I had previous legislation that would undo the preservation laws in Georgia, giving the ability to just stop maintaining such symbols. I'm told that Stone Mountain Park spends literally tens of thousands of dollars a year to make certain that the overgrowth does not obscure the carving in the mountain. I do have another piece of legislation that will be heard in January. Previously, the governor wanted to do by executive order, form a citizens committee of certainly citizens of great stature to discuss this very issue and come up with solutions. One of the people he wanted to appoint to this committee was Bernice King, the daughter of Martin Luther King. I suggested to the governor, after talking to Bernice King, that he should have a conversation with her, because if she said no, this whole thing could collapse. Sure enough, the governor had a meeting with her, and she decided that she wanted no part of such a committee in view of the fact that at that time, the legislature was considering egregious voting rights bills. So I have a bill, after talking to Bernice, that I will sponsor. I will give the governor some appointees as well as the speaker and lieutenant governor of outstanding Georgia citizens of great repute to discuss this very issue. And as I said at the top, I just believe that this is not a matter of when these symbols and memorials to the Confederacy will come down. Thanks to students like those at Wheeler High School, it's a matter of when, not if.
Thank you so much. That was a great education. Thank you for that. And thank you for introducing us to Mr. Rivers. That was a beautiful story as well. Thank you. Let's see. Supporters of the Confederacy often say that these symbols should remain up to keep Americans from forgetting our history, even though by keeping them up, the full and truthful history of Black people has been omitted. But according to Tolchin's research, Georgians primarily get their information about the Civil War from other sources. 41% learned Civil War history from books, as it should be. 25% use online sources or digital media. 14% from historical authorities like museums, historians, or the Library of Congress. Not one Georgian in our survey learned about the Civil War from Confederate monuments. 0, which is a good thing because the inscriptions on them are typically untruthful and honor men who fought to enslave Black people for their own selfish purposes. SPLC's Tolchin survey also found that 48% of Georgians believe that schools should be named after people and figures who convey a sense of pride for everyone, not after Confederate generals who fought to preserve chattel slavery. You know, the strategic placement of Confederate symbols in public spaces is especially damaging to children of color. Forcing students, especially students of color, to encounter Confederate imagery and learn in spaces honoring those who fought to continue the inhumane enslavement of human beings, as well as keep Black people uneducated, is cruel and psychological punishment. This isn't something that the SPLC made up to push our own narrative or beliefs. It is fact-based, it is research-driven. The only lesson these symbols of hate teach is the notion that white supremacy is still the law of the land. Now, it's my great honor and privilege to introduce you to just 2 students, wonderful student activists from Wheeler Name Change, the Wheeler Name Change group. I first saw these students on the news presenting to the school board or the city council, I can't remember. They were so powerful. Just a dynamic and courageous group of students out of Cobb County, Georgia, who have been fighting to rename their school to something that all students can be proud to display on their diploma. The SPLC found out about Wheeler High School earlier this year when the students went before the Cobb County Board of Commissioners and were not only denied a chance to speak, but ignored by their elected leaders in Cobb County government and by several of the county's school board members. The SPLC wrote letters to every single sitting member of the Cobb County Board of Commissioners and the Cobb County Public Schools Superintendent in support of Wheeler Name Change Group's effort. There is no denying the fact in their research presentation, which is probably why Cobb County's Board of Commissioners nor the Cobb County School Board wanted to listen to them. For Georgians who may not already know, there are 45 schools named after Confederate leaders in the state of Georgia. Georgia, in fact, leads the nation with schools that are named after Confederate leaders. Now it's my privilege to introduce Harini Vijay and AJ Sanders of the Wheeler Name Change Group. They'll talk about their advocacy to get their school name changed. Thank you. AJ, Harini.
My name is AJ Sanders, and I'm joined by Harini. Our high school was named after Confederate General Joseph E. Wheeler on August 12, 1964, during Cobb County's ongoing resistance towards integration. So our namesake was chosen without discussion from the community and without regard for its historical implications. Furthermore, the name does not meet the current Cobb County School District naming standards. Today, as one of the most diverse high schools in Georgia, we are working to rename our school so that it is representative of the diversity of our student body and the values that we represent.
Firstly, to provide a little bit more clarification on the current naming policy, the FDCR rule section A2B states that the person that the institution is named after must have made a significant educational, historical, or social contribution in the community, which Joseph Wheeler does not fit this criteria. Furthermore, the current naming policy provides rules that the names of new institutions must adhere to, but it does not outline criteria for the renaming process of previously existing institutions, whereas neighboring counties, Clayton, Fulton, Gwinnett, and even Marietta City Schools all have guidelines that advise a renaming process for existing institutions. Cobb County's policy simply states that this task is left to the discretion of the superintendent with minimal community input. This policy must first be revised, then voted on, and finally amended before it can be followed through with changing the name of our high school.
So for over a year and a half, our initiative has been trying to get on the Board of Education's agenda so that our research and motives can be prioritized by the superintendent. But we have been denied over 3 times. 13 initiative members, including ourselves, joined by 2 parents, took up the entire 30-minute speaking slot at our April 2021 board meeting to present to the board our research. Once again, we were ignored, and our only method of communication was reduced to emails and public comments.
Presence at public comments only have become more inaccessible because of Cobb County School District's BCBI policy, which requires minors to have a parent and guardian in attendance with them at public comments. We're now not only required to account for time taken out of our lives, but that of our parents as well, which is an added hurdle for our fight. Over the summer, the seniors of our initiative also graduated, leaving us with members who at maximum were only 17 years old. Despite these members being able to drive and advocate for themselves, the BCBI policy still requires them to have a guardian present while providing public comments, which lowers the accessibility and ease with which our initiative can bring our issues to light.
At the October 2021 board meeting, the Anti-Semitism and Racism resolution was proposed by Randy Scamahorn after an incident of anti-Semitic graffiti appearing in both Pope and Lassiter high schools. Following this, Dr. Jaha Howard made a motion to amend the resolution with the subsequent statement. Whereas the Cobb County School District and Board of Education humbly regret the current school names that honor Confederate military leaders and will move with all deliberate speed to rename them in an appropriate way that reflects the goal of inclusion. His resolution was seconded by Leroy Trey Hutchins, but they were outvoted 4-2 by Randy Scamahorn, Brad Wheeler, David Chastain, and David Banks. This vote shows a complete lack of willingness by the majority of the board to commit to a renaming effort. But it also shows that when elected officials turn a blind eye and allow the upholding of Confederate leaders and white supremacist ideology, it will show the greater community that discriminatory actions like the graffiti, for example, are acceptable.
Over the course of 14 months, our grievances have been nothing short of ignored by 4 out of 8 of the board members, and our voices have been continuously overlooked. Cobb County consistently talks about achieving student success, but then disregards the barriers preventing their students from being able to do so. Currently, our petition to rename our school has over 6,000 signatures, but we need more community support when it comes to contacting the board and elevating our voices, especially from members who aren't in nearby Wheeler District or distinctly associated with our high school. By bringing in a more diverse range of support from members and organizations, we want to prove to the Board of Education that this issue is of importance and needs to be addressed. It would help us a lot if you could contact your district officials either through email or phone, or even if you can help us speak at public comments. Our website has the emails of the members of the Cobb County School District Board officials, as well as email templates and calling scripts. Further, building connections is a major part of promoting and increasing public awareness of our initiative. So if you know anyone that you believe would be of help to our initiative, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll turn it back to Ms. Brooks.
Thank you, Harini. Thank you, AJ. You're just beautiful examples of the future. Thank you so much. We have dropped in the chat the link to the school board, and please ask for your support as anything we can do to help is needed and appreciated. So thank you. We're going to introduce that video clip of you all presenting next?
Evening, my name is Shweta Krishnan and I'm a senior at Wheeler High School. I'm set to graduate in approximately 8 months, and it is a momentous time in my life that I've dreamed of experiencing. Instead of rejoicing over my accomplishments, the only thing I can think about is the fact that all of our diplomas will display the name Joseph Wheeler High School on the front. It is shameful that we will be forced to carry around the name of someone who is loyal to a government that endorsed the subjugation of Black people.
We need consistent and productive dialogue. Stonewalling this issue is not the way to continue on moving forward. The fact of the matter is, ignoring the honoring of a Confederate general fighting to keep chattel slavery legal is an active position against inclusion, against all of the minority students attending Wheeler. Your apathy is seen and felt by the community, and it is a direct opposition for progress.
By neglecting our needs for the past 14 months, you prove to the entire community that, should they need it, you have no interest in prioritizing their needs. Throughout the summer, we sent you all emails 3 times a week. Each of you received several emails from at least one student within your jurisdiction. To have only received responses from 3 of you, despite representation from constituents of the whole board, is more than concerning, as it shows us exactly how much you value our voices.
This board has yet again trivialized the impact of symbols of white supremacy. This is what happens when you don't reflect in your actions that you are working to create a safe and respectful environment for all students, faculty, and staff. This is what happens when diversity and inclusion are a suggestion instead of a priority. We as a community have a responsibility to our students to ensure that this board no longer be allowed to normalize and foster an atmosphere that is not just dismissive of, but openly hostile to minority students. No teacher at any Cobb County school would be allowed to ignore their students the way you all have ignored us. Amend the current naming policy to allow for the community to decide on an appropriate new name for our school.
That was so powerful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Just want to continue to encourage you, lift you up. Thank you so much for what you do every single day. And please tell your colleagues in your group as well that we stand with you. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move to questions that have come up throughout the briefing. Our colleagues have been gathering your questions together, and we're going to spend a few minutes addressing them, as many as we can. If we're unable to get to your question and you're still able to drop them in the Q&A, we promise to send you a response after the briefing. I have one question. The carving at Stone Mountain is really, really large. What about the themes that are expressed in Stone Mountain? Is there any resistance to disabling that land of cotton theme? I hope so. Stone Mountain Park is a great resource, but it is scarred by Confederate stuff. Let me go to the SMAC folk and respond to that. Anything being done about disabling the land of cotton piece?
So I will, I'll respond, and then of course, Michelle, jump in if there's anything else you want to add. I don't know that there's any intentional focus on disabling those things. And I think we need to be very clear. The Stone Mountain Memorial Association has full authority to make the changes that not only SMAC, the Stone Mountain Action Coalition, has been asking for, but also what the community has been requesting. You know, our presentation earlier tonight showed how easy it would be to change the street names, how easy it would be to remove, you know, the markers and you know, all of the other symbols of the Confederacy in that park, and they are choosing not to. You know, a lot of the resolutions that were passed, in our opinion, are just small tokens, and the fact that they haven't followed through with them is just further proof that the Memorial Association is just seriously not even committed to hearing, listening, and following the will of the people.
Thank you.
And just to add to the theme of the land of cotton, you know, there have been several proposals given by the Sons of Confederate Veterans wanting to amplify the current pseudo living history area of the park, but we as SMAC have made clear that Stone Mountain cannot be a living history museum. It is not a historical site related to the Civil War, and that is something that we're actively advocating for as well.
Thank you for that. And I just want the Wheeler students, I want you to know that there's a lot of love and admiration and gratitude for you that's coming through in the Q&As. No specific questions, but folks are asking that we share their admiration and their gratitude to you for your fight. So thank you so much. The next question, actually, here's a question for Wheeler High School. Have you come up with an alternative name yet?
We currently have not. We want to leave this decision up to the community as opposed to how the original decision was made by the school board. Wheeler High School was originally named by the superintendent without any community input, so we would like to leave that up to community feedback as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And Kimberly P., here's a question for you. Just wondering if representatives of Native people to whom this place may have sacred significance have been or are part of any aspect of this project, research, and/or planning.
So at the SPLC, we really advocate that communities decide what belongs in their public space and how we, what decisions are made. And it's especially important that we prioritize historically marginalized groups when we are having these public conversations. So we 100% advocate for and support and find ways to try to include the most historically marginalized groups in these conversations. That includes not only Native and Indigenous populations, but also descendants of formerly enslaved populations, and really for it to be a community conversation.
Thank you. If I could add to that, I think that your research and the work of activists, not just kind of this year or last year, but really for the last few years, have really brought together a community of folks who are contesting memorials and monuments of all kinds. It's become a global phenomenon. The work that you are doing here, that we're doing on the ground in the U.S. We saw that post the public murder of Mr. Floyd. We saw that it had implications across the Atlantic. So these issues and these concerns are connected. And I'm just happy that we can all kind of address these oppressive symbols together. Lisa, I have a question for you. How do you feel your art impacts the social justice movement generally?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I would say that tonight's webinar might be one way. The reason that I have this opportunity is that I am intentionally have my studio at a arts organization called the Arts Exchange. We're in East Point now, but it's primarily Black-led, historically Black-led arts organization. But it puts me in a really interesting community that is for a long time has been interested in social change, other artists as well of various disciplines. And we had a festival this summer called Reimagine Democracy Art and Social Justice Festival, where it was the gathering of artists and activists. And it was through that I met someone from the Southern Poverty Law Center, Nancy Abudu, who just got it really excited about the Stone Mountain proposal image that I had up really big in my studio. And she said she would connect me with Kimberly Allen, who is sort of the power behind, who's put all this together. and connect me with this. So I very much feel that artists can be of service. It's a creative form of public service, public art can be of service to help amplify the message sometimes of, and perhaps attract a different audience, entertain, enlighten other audiences. So my work is not, it's not prescriptive that way. It's not, as I say, it's not I hope it's not a serving of civic vegetables, but it does hopefully make, it either provokes conversation or it invites conversation. And I put forward ideas that I think that people perhaps that I want to talk about and that I have questions about, and in the field of why there is not more social justice in our world.
Well, we appreciate your contributions, Lisa. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We just have time for maybe one question, and I'm just going to take a little privilege here and invite the Wheeler students to take this last comment. Anything that you want to share, you want people to know before we sign off?
We get a lot of opposition in regards to wouldn't changing the name simply erase the history that is being recognized by the name. And I'd like to address that by saying that Joseph Wheeler and his role in history is not unacknowledged. The Civil War and its impact on American history is included in the curriculum in our schools. But when our school was named, it was put in writing and made clear what chapter of Wheeler's history they were choosing to honor. So not only is it reflective of the values of our student body, that chapter of his history and its values are not something that we want to exemplify or bestow honor upon. This initiative is about exposing the lack of honor with his name and reconsidering who, how, and why we honor people. This is part of a larger social reckoning to reconsider history and how it is portrayed and honored in society. History cannot be remade. History is what it is, and how we choose to reflect that history is what's in need of remaking.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Perfect close. I want to thank Mr. Sipp and the City of Atlanta. I want to thank our artists, Lisa, Kimberly, Representative Mitchell, the Stone Mountain Action Coalition, the students from Wheeler High School, and you all for being with us tonight. It's so encouraging to know that people have taken an interest and will become involved in this ongoing movement to remove these symbols of the Confederacy from public space. Again, you can contact any of our panelists at the email address listed on the slide, and our staff member will also place them in the chat if you'd like. To the Stone Mountain Action Coalition and Wheeler Name Change Group, we thank you for your passion, your courage in fighting for these name changes. Know that we'll continue to stand with you. And again, thank you to the City of Atlanta for producing such a thought-provoking exhibition. Lisa, thank you for your brilliance. Thank you all for joining us tonight.